Welcome back to the Inside Athletic Training Podcast. Today we're joined by Will Carroll, author of Under the Knife and one of the leading voices on baseball injuries. In this episode, we break down his recent presentation, Baseball's $1 Billion Bleed, examining the true financial cost of injuries and what today's data says about the future of sports medicine in the game. Enjoy the show. All right, Will, welcome to the Inside Athletic Training Podcast. Excited to have you on for a special episode and recap a recent presentation you gave at the Baseball Team Medicine Conference in Arizona, but also share your life's work with our listeners. I think it'd be great. To get started today, before we jump into your presentation and kind of the details of everything you do and cover in baseball sports medicine, you've been called the injury expert for a long time now. Talk to us about how your interests kind of sparked in injuries, sports medicine. What's your background? How did you come to this point in your career?
Yeah, the injury expert name is because Will Carroll was taken on Twitter, and they made me come up with something. And I was like, I don't know. Let's see what's available. Honestly, it's one of those things where I guess it's worked. It's a branding exercise, but
Sure.
I stand next to some of the doctors and athletic trainers and therapists around baseball, and I'm just like, God, why did I think of that name? So for me, my background is I grew up in athletic training rooms. My father's an athletic trainer. He taught sports medicine for years. He's retired now. But being around that gave me two lessons. First, I didn't want to do it. These guys work too hard.
That's right.
So, well, I've been in training rooms. I understand it. I speak the language. I am not any of those. I am certainly not a doctor. I am not an athletic trainer. I am not a therapist of any sort. But I understand it enough that I can talk to them. I can understand what the surgeries are, what the modalities are, what's going on with the injury, and explain that to people in terms they can understand. So that's really my one skill, is that I'm a translator.
Okay.
I can take, very complicated medical concepts and distill it down and tell you how it's going to screw your fantasy team. So that's basically what I do. I started doing it because I just didn't find that it was out there. I didn't think people were taking injuries as seriously. There were a couple of people out there doing good work, but it wasn't as broadly out there as I wanted. And I was dumb enough to think I could do it better.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that starting my 24th year of Under the Knife. It's bounced around a little bit from Baseball Prospectus to ESPN to Bleacher Report and now on Substack, but it's basically been the same thing. I don't have the first column I ever wrote, but I do have the third, and it looks remarkably the same. So I've made utterly no progress. But one of the things that I'm coming to terms with as I do this more and more is we've learned so much. I mean, the game has changed.
Yeah.
It's cliche, but the game has changed. And things that were not possible 24 years ago are now. I was just writing about Anthony Santander's labrum surgery.
Sure.
Or impending labrum surgery. And I wrote a piece, I think it was at Slate, that was about if pitchers were horses, when they got a labrum surgery, they just shoot them because it was less than 50%. Now people do come back from it. I think it's about an 80% operation.
Okay.
So, and part of that is just simple changes in technique and simple changes in the equipment. We've just got better everything now.
Yeah.
And so you have to change. And so, well, I've explained labrum injuries for 24 years. A labrum injury from 2002 is not what we're writing about in 2026. And
Sure.
I think being able to talk about that, being able to talk about those changes, the one thing that hasn't changed is the athletic trainers and how much they do and how many hours they put in. And I don't think that gets highlighted enough. I actually got a piece coming up about the longtime trainer for the Mets and Yankees, Gus Malk.
Okay.
I'm sure there's some guys out there that actually know that name.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that don't. And the guy who was the athletic trainer for dynasty level Yankees and the Miracle Mets. It's the same guy. How do we not all know that story?
Yeah. No, that's really cool to hear. That was a question I had for you. Early on, you mentioned you're a translator of medical information, right? When you first got started, did you see yourself as the translator? Did you see yourself as a journalist? Did you see yourself as an analyst? And also, did you have a sense of kind of like imposter syndrome where you're standing next to team doctors and athletic trainers and you're giving them advice or you're talking about what they do and you're like, how am I a credible source for this? Did you have that feeling when you first started?
Oh, I still have that. Imposter syndrome is a real thing, but I think you also have to kind of lean into that. There's a funny story. Fairly early on in my career, a team doctor called me up and said, "Hey, I've got something I'd like to run by you." And I was like, "Okay, sure." And he starts going in there, and I realize he's basically consulting me, and I had to pause and I say, "Hey, doc, you realize I'm not a doctor?" And he's like, "Oh, okay." And then just continued asking the questions. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But I mean, I was honored that somebody cared about my opinion. I was a little bit worried that somebody cared about my opinion. But no, one of the things I learned early is it was important for me to highlight those real experts. And I think that's why people spoke to me, is that I did understand there should be a line. Everybody wants to say, there's a pitcher who had elbow issues at the end of last season. Now he's having elbow surgery. Why didn't he have it back then? Well, because he might have avoided surgery. He was taking the offseason to see if they could get him past it and put him back in the rotation. And people get frustrated with that because nobody's explained it to them. They don't understand. They don't think, hey, the chance to avoid surgery has some real value, because we don't allow a lot of these athletic trainers to come out and talk. We don't allow the team doctors to come out and talk. And this is across sports. But, I've seen more of that. Tim Kremchak, the longtime doctor for the Cincinnati Reds, used to do a pregame thing, and he was great at it. I wish more people would do that. Todd Tomczyk with the Pirates has been out front more. He's great. And I think they should have everybody come out there. If it's only once a week, I realize a lot of trainers don't want to talk. They don't want to be in the public eye. That's not their skill set. But there's got to be somebody on staff that can do it. If not, heck, you and me will come in and give that weekly press conference.
There we go. We'll put you up there.
For me, it's not about standing next to these guys. Was really standing on the shoulders of giants. It was, hey, explain this to me. Help me explain what's going on here to other people. And that's basically been my entire career.
Yeah. No, I think that's an interesting point you make about, like media availability for team physicians. And, a lot of these men and women are brilliant. We've had like Dr. Freehill on the show. Listen to him talk about sports medicine is fascinating. Whether it's Ron Porterfield, a longtime PBATS member, working with the Dodgers, or a new younger athletic trainer who has different innovative insights. I think it's really cool to hear that behind the scenes. And that was kind of my next question for you, Will. Gathering information, obviously you're close with, a ton of people. You probably have amazing sources within the game from, you mentioned 24 years of doing this. How did it begin for you gaining access, communicating with team physicians, communicating with athletic trainers? How does that grow, like your relationships, to turn into the point where you're talking and, like you said, almost consulting to some of these people?
Yeah, it's just building relationships. It's talking to somebody, and it is transactional, but you can't make it, hey, tell me this and I'll do that. A lot of it's just, hey, help me explain this. What's going on here? And there'll be times they'll say, I can't tell you, and you nod and smile. And sometimes it's not asking the question. There'll be a big injury, and a team source will call me and go, "Hey, why didn't you ask?" And I was like, "Because I imagine everybody asked. The national guys are coming in there asking,
Yeah.
you know, uh, maybe that's another skill. I know when to ask and when not to ask, and I've built up the credibility over years. Early in it, it was a lot of learning. I've had a lot of people yell at me. I still get calls from teams going, "Where'd you get this?" I can remember a GM absolutely pounding the table, screaming at me, going, "Where did you get this?" And if he only knew that it wasn't who he thought it was,
Yeah.
it was pretty funny. But he never said I was wrong. So I think you have to build build relationships, trust people, and allow them to trust you.
Yeah. And kind of moving on a bit here, when you were working with Baseball Prospectus, you kind of helped, I would say, legitimatize injury analysis as part of analytics. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Was there a gap you were trying to fill there in coverage, number one? Second question, did you kind of sense like the industry's appetite for this material? As we've talked before, you see this on fantasy sports shows all the time now. Did you sense that was coming?
No,
Okay.
no, I don't want to pretend I did. It was basically I wanted to fill a gap in things I didn't see.
Okay.
Um, I think it was John Grisham that said, "Write the book that you want to see on the shelf."
Sure.
And so it was sort of that. Yeah, there were people. Rick Wilton was probably the founding father of this kind of writing, and Stefania Bell has done a great job
Yeah.
following at ESPN, and there are other great voices out there. Not a ton, because the leagues don't love it. MLB doesn't have an injury writer,
Mm-hmm.
though I've done some work there way in the past. The NFL hates injuries. I get a call every year from somebody in the NFL going, why are you doing this? Because they want to control the information, which is even more important in this day and age of sports books and prediction markets. The injury information moves lines like nothing else.
Yeah.
So they want to control that information. They don't want somebody like me out there. Um, Basketball, hockey, soccer, especially.
Mm-hmm.
Soccer is so big. Down to golf, skiing.
Sure.
I don't know how many calls I got last week about Lindsey Vonn and her knee and then her leg.
Yeah.
So I think there should be more coverage, but the leagues see injuries as negatives and they don't want to talk about it. And that's why I've grown stronger in talking about the losses. We've done such an amazing job of bringing people back from injuries and coming up with these amazing surgeries. Frank Job's miraculous Tommy John surgery has
Yeah.
basically kept the game going. Imagine if we lost all those pitchers as we used to in the 40s and 50s.
Yeah. That's insane.
Imagine if Sandy Koufax had a back half of his career the way that Clayton Kershaw did. They'd probably have very similar numbers. So it's one of those where I think we need to understand the cost of injuries. My favorite stat is there's now, I think it's still two. There's two players that have had Tommy John surgery in the Hall of Fame. Two. Now, this is a surgery that started out in 1974 and accelerated in the 90s. So tons of these players should be or are eligible. And yet,
Yeah.
some of the great pitchers didn't make it. Why? Why? It is one of the great trivia questions of all time is who was the first Tommy John patient to be in the Hall of Fame. And it's Paul Molitor, of all people.
Wow.
And now we have John Smoltz. Mariano Rivera did not have Tommy John surgery. So it's one of those where, does Tommy John surgery take someone out of Hall of Fame contention? Is just missing that much enough? I don't think that's the case. We're going to have guys like Justin Verlander, who had very late career Tommy John surgery and was a Hall of Famer before that, and a few more that'll come in down the line. But it's intriguing to see what the actual cost both physically and professionally and overall to the game. The title of my presentation at the conference was the $1 billion bleed, because this last year was the first year we went over 1 billion with a B, $1 billion in losses to injuries.
Yeah. No, that's wild, and we're going to get into very much detail about that presentation shortly here. But to your point about the Hall of Fame, that's incredibly wild, and I'm sure, like you said, Justin Verlander, Shohei Ohtani, obviously, will be in there one day. But pretty crazy stat. Will, I want to move on to more like philosophy-based questions for you, which will lead us toward your presentation, the $1 billion bleed, which again was awesome. You've said that more tracking does not equal more health. Can you break down kind of where you view the industry of sports medicine has maybe, in your opinion, confused like measurement with being the solution to problems?
I don't think measurement and statistics tell us certain things, but it's the holistic view that I think we lack, because so many of these things are happening so fast.
Yeah.
If we go back 20 years, if somebody here's my story on this. It used to be if somebody threw 95 miles an hour, that dude was a star.
Yeah.
Nolan Ryan threw 100, but not all the time. But when he did, man, you saw it. It was on a tiny TV, maybe in black and white, but you saw it. Today, there was a couple of years ago, I was watching a game. Me and my friend had driven down to Cincinnati, and it was like a Wednesday afternoon. The Padres were playing the Reds. Neither team was very good. And they bring in this guy out of the pen for the Padres, and I'm like, who is this guy? I've never heard of this guy. I don't know this name at all. How did this happen? And his first pitch was 96. And I'm like, how do I not know this guy?
Yeah.
If I had been a kid and my team had a guy pumping 96 on a Wednesday afternoon, I would have known who that guy was. I've looked back, I can't remember who it was because he's just some guy.
Another guy.
And now every guy. I saw a thing. It's February, and a college pitcher just threw 102 in a game.
I think I saw it the other day as well. Yeah, like what are we ramped up for already?
Yeah. So now 96 is, that's a 50 pitch. So the game has changed so fast that even a measurement like velocity, which we're going to measure all the time because radar guns exist. What measurements do we have? If you go back to Nolan Ryan, here's one. We don't have pitch counts on all his games. I mean, something as simple as that. We don't have the StatCast numbers for all of Justin Verlander's starts, and he's still pitching.
Yeah.
And for kids today, what data don't we have on them as they're coming up through high school, college, travel ball, into the minor leagues? And these guys go through so many different places, let alone levels, and then they show up to the major leagues, and we expect the athletic trainers to go, okay, keep them healthy. Well, half the damage has been done, probably more. Yeah. So just being able to measure things is great, but what haven't we measured? What part of the data story do we have? I think more data is always better. Give me more and more data and let me figure it out, or feed it to Claude and let Claude figure it out. Now,
there you go.
Which is going to change things even more.
Yeah.
Instead of sitting here, staring at a chart, maybe an athletic trainer is going to have a prompt, and he's going to say, "Hey, Claude, dig through this 10 terabytes of data and his biomechanical report and his last 10 starts, and tell me is there anything that's signaling an injury?"
Sure.
That's amazing. I'm more excited about what's going to happen in the next 5 years than I am in what happened in the last 20, because the pace is changing so much, and it's going to be brutal. I mean, brutal on all those people, because there's going to be more and more data put in and a chance to get more and more data out. So it's a question of how are we going to use that and interpret that, and then get their hands on these guys. What modalities are we to use? What things are we to do? At what point is an athletic trainer just going to say, hey, we got to stop? This guy should not be throwing a bullpen today. And that's tough because these guys are on, often year-to-year contracts. These are their careers as much as it's a baseball player's career. So it's tough when you've got a player pressuring you. He needs to get that next contract. The GM might be on the hot seat. The manager is always on the hot seat. So they need that pitcher out there. And for an athletic trainer to have the guts, the conviction, the morals to say, hey, no, we need to stop and figure this out is tough. And it's getting tougher.
Yeah, and that was kind of a great segue to my next question, more specifically to the athletic trainer or the director of sports medicine or anyone in charge there. How important in your eyes is it to have somebody in that position to act as a translator between the medical data that we talked about, which could be incredibly there can be a ton of it, all the way, communicating that to the baseball decision makers. I know those medical director roles have grown. I would say more than half the teams have those. Yeah. Someone basically in a front office role communicating what does this mean for the player to the people who are making personnel decisions. How important is that? And just talk about your thoughts on the athletic trainer holding that role.
I think it's extremely important. I think a lot of teams realized, some of them earlier than others, that you needed someone who had a voice, the respect of the organization. That's one of the things. I don't think the role matters. Certainly, the title doesn't matter. Titles in baseball have gotten so ridiculous. Very early on in my career, I asked somebody what he was. What was it? The job title used to be like director of baseball operations.
Oh yeah,
and there were 30 of them. None of them had the same job. And I would say, "So what do you do?" And every single one of them would answer, "Oh, what do you think I do?" I don't know. Your title means nothing. Tell me what the heck you do. So some of these titles, whether it's director of baseball or chief baseball officer or medical director, what that means, different things in different places. Yeah. Who has a seat at the table? Who gets listened to? And in between that, who speaks up? Sometimes you just got to speak up. You got to say this. I don't think we should draft this guy because. And not a lot of guys speak up, and not all guys get listened to. So I think in organizations, especially as they're always reforming themselves, being able to have somebody with that organizational respect is absolutely key. Somebody who's been there a while.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't want it to just be that old timer who's been there forever. There are guys, Rick Smith with the Angels.
Yeah,
that guy's been there longer than the Angels.
I think Smitty's coming up on his 50th year or something this year.
Yeah, it's close, but one of the reasons he has is because he's been able to adjust and move. Sure. and change along the ways. And the really great athletic trainers I see, the ones that do last in this and don't burn out, are often the ones that are adaptable, that learn quickly, that see something coming, that develop those relationships with the players and the others. So that's part of it. Is you have to know you're being heard, but you have to have something worth being heard as well. Sure. So there's a little judiciousness to it, and that's why some of the great, you mentioned Ron Porterfield earlier. Guys like him and Ken Crenshaw. I can remember when they were both with the Rays, and now they've both moved on and grown, and now Ron's moving on, which is crazy to think of. It reminds me just how old I am.
Yeah, it's funny hearing in my time, almost 15 years working with this group, and Thinking of a staff with Ken Crenshaw, Jamie Reed, and Ron Porterfield in Tampa starting the franchise. I mean, what a Hall of Fame staff. Really cool to kind of think about that athletic training tree. Well, Will, I want to, move on to your presentation, The $1 Billion Bleed, which was awesome to see in person in Arizona last month. Let's start with the title, $1 Billion Bleed. When you say that, give some background, why you titled the presentation that way. What exactly is bleeding? Is it money, time, careers, trust within an organization? Give us kind of an overview as we dive into the presentation.
Yeah, all of the above. When Roger Kaplinger asked me to come and speak, he was like, "What would you like to speak on?" I was like, "I don't know. How am I going to stand up next to, some of these guys? You're
no kidding.
Put me on the day before somebody does a live surgery. That'd be good." One of the greats. So you see all those names and you're like, what do I have to add? And I thought, I've got to go to the data. Let's go to the data and see where we are. And he had asked me very early. And as we got closer and closer to the end of the season, and I saw that $1 billion number going from 945 million in 2024. And I was like, we're going to cross $1 billion. And I thought somebody just had to stand up and say, good Lord, $1 billion.
Yeah.
And it's not specifically anyone's fault. It's that we saw the fire. We didn't start the fire. I'm certainly not going to sing, but this is a huge, giant dumpster fire of money and careers, and it's hurting the game. And all of the people in that room I knew love this game.
Yeah.
If we could take half that money and put it back in, heck, make a bonus structure for the medical staff. If you can do it, if you can knock those down, man, we'd have some really rich trainers. $1 billion buys a franchise. You could buy the Miami Marlins. I forget exactly what the number was, but I was like, how do I show what this is? And there was a New York skyscraper that was sold for $1 billion. You could buy like 15,000 Corvettes, which that's a really big garage. It was very literally the salary of everybody in that room if you take out the doctors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just the slide you showed with the buildings and the Corvettes, mind-blowing how much money is bleeding, like you mentioned. Well, Will, one of the kind of statements that when I was listening just struck me was you said, compared to 20 years ago, it looks like we've made no progress at all. Yeah. Can you expand on that? Because obviously the athletic trainers would say, well, we've made a ton of progress in terms of what they do. I don't want to misconstrue what you're saying.
Yeah.
These people have gotten so much more intelligent. Surgeries from, Dr. Meister and other people, things have gotten better. But talk about what that statement means to you. Compared to 20 years ago, it looks like we've made no progress at all.
Yeah, I think the key word in that is it looks. If you just watch that chart going up and up and up, whether it's days, whether it's dollars, whether it's value in terms of wins, it's just going linear. And it lines up really well with velocity when it comes to pitching injuries.
So we'll get into that.
We know some of the cause.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I think it would have been worse. The problem is all our advances, all the changes in technique and rehab, well, maybe not rehab, but all the progress that the medical side has made is hidden by the fact that the number keeps going up. So with the velocity, I think, especially on the pitching side, it should have gone up way more. It's being held down to a lower, but still terrible level. So I think they've managed to retard the progress, the growth in this case, but it doesn't look like it. If you just look at the numbers, they're bad. But I think without the athletic trainers, without the doctors, without all those things that we have learned over the last 20 years, it would look significantly worse.
Sure. No, that's a great way to kind of explain it. Looking, the keyword there, like you mentioned. I want to talk about velocity here. You mentioned when we were all growing up, like 91. It's like, oh, that's
Yeah.
pretty good there. That's like something admirable. Now you're seeing 105, you're seeing just insane numbers. And it's an arms race, like you mentioned. Velocity up, surgeries up was a part of your presentation. Question for you would, people are going to chase velocity because it leads to
It
more
works.
wins. It works.
Yeah.
It leads to bigger contracts. It leads to World Series championships. Your bet throwing harder is, I guess, in simplest form, better. You get more outs.
No.
There's different ways to pitch, as we all know. But you said velocity didn't break baseball; it exposed the system. Dive into that, and kind of also, do you see like an end to this? Like, what is the max we could get to? Where do things slow down? What's your kind of whole vision for just the word velocity in pitching?
Yeah, I'll try to stick to velocity. But one of the things here is we can get to zero. Zero has been done. If you just limit it to soft tissue, preventable.
Mm-hmm.
I was writing about Anthony Santander of the Blue Jays, who
Yeah,
ran into a wall. Look, Ministral didn't. There was nothing that medical staff could do that would make him not run into the wall. That wall
sure.
was sufficiently padded. I mean, obviously, it could have used more, but that was nothing on the medical staff. But that the days are going on their ledger.
Yeah.
So there are ways we can get better, and I do think zero injury days is possible because it has been done. Not in Major League Baseball, but I think it's possible. For velocity, the reason people are chasing velocity is because I was about to say it's easy, and it's not easy. It's a lot of work, and there's systemic ways to do it, different ones. My friend Kyle Boddy and Driveline are probably the leaders in that, but there's a bunch out there that have followed in that. What we haven't done is earn it, and this is the issue. Kids have gone out there and not systematized it, and baseball hasn't. One of my slides was about PitchMart, which I think had every good intention. It's great people, but all it did was kill Little League Baseball. People were like, "Oh, Little League Baseball is going to hold my son's innings down." Nope, we're going to go to this travel org who's not.
Yeah.
And my kid can throw 3 games this weekend at full max velocity. I think with velocity, what we've got to do is build for it, and then we've got to build under it. You've got to have a foundation, and I think we've gotten away from it. One of the great Greek sports stories is Milo of Croton. And the story goes that this kid who went on to become a great athlete in the original Olympic Games picked up a calf after it was born, put it on his shoulders, and walked around the field. And then the next day, walked out, picked up the calf, walked around the field. And a couple of years later, he's carrying a full-on bull around. I would have liked to seen this, but it offers the same thing that everybody does. If I'm going to go out and do 10 pull-ups, I'm probably not going to do it the first day. If I'm going to lift 300 pounds, I'm not going to start with 300 pounds and hope. You're going to build up. And I don't think we do this. We've got pitchers throwing harder and harder, less and less. We're scared to let them go out there and earn this. If you can go out there and throw 80 good pitches at hard velocity, recover well, okay, do it again. And if you do it again a couple times, okay, now you get 90. 90 pitches is your limit. Now 100. The 100 pitch limit was put in. I mean, there is a lot of history to it, going all the way back to Paul Richard. Keith Miller and Randy Gisarelli found 100 because it really does work. That is an inflection point, but it shouldn't be the be all end all. Dusty Baker started just using it as a number because it was easy to remember, and baseball followed it. The third time penalty was easier to say 100 pitches rather than explain the third time through penalty.
Yeah.
So I think what we have to do is really systematize a foundation to it, have a progressive system that allows somebody to go, look, there's pitchers out there that can probably throw 175 pitches every third day. We don't know it because we've got them in a system that allows them to throw 80 pitches every sixth day. We don't test. We're not stressing these guys. I think there were like 10 pitchers that had more than 100 innings in the minor leagues. 100, 100 innings. And then we expect them to come in and we bemoan why can't pitchers go 7 innings anymore? Well, because they're sprinting, because we haven't built the foundation. And again, this isn't on the athletic trainer, but they're part of the system. And I think if we systematize it, then we're going to get better results. Right now, it's a hodgepodge. It's pitching coaches that change every year. A pitching coach that a guy goes to back home. We need to really systematize this whole thing in a much better, much more scientific way.
Yeah, and you talked about the Little League issue. Pitch Smart, like you mentioned, there's some brilliant people on that advisory board. Great recommendations, but it's can't be enforced everywhere.
Yeah.
Youth sports specialization is something we talk about a lot. We had an interview with Jamie Reed that I mentioned quite frequently, where longtime Rangers athletic trainer and medical director. He showed the heat map of where players in the Midwest, when they were drafted, all blue back in the day because I grew up in Milwaukee, you're in the Midwest. You couldn't throw in the winter.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to do it. You literally couldn't do it unless you found an open basketball gym, which there was no mound, there was no pitch, there was no pitching lab with all this data, and you're not pumping max effort all year. So the blue was arm health for the Midwest high school pitchers, where a lot of people were drafted from. Now it's all red. You can throw anywhere all year round. Talk about that foundation and your views on youth sports specialization. Should people be playing all year round? And is that kind of a place where it starts, in your opinion?
A little bit. There's been debate back and forth, and I can remember, gosh, this is 20 years ago, Jim Andrews talking about, everybody taking a break.
Yeah.
And again, absolute best of intentions, best of what we knew at the time, but maybe not. Tim Gabbett's work with acute to chronic workload ratio, things that Ben Hansen did at Modus in trying to figure out how to measure this and what actually worked, Ben now with the Mets. I think those things, we didn't have those tools, until the Modus sensor, now the Driveline Pulse, was out there. You didn't have something that could give those kind of readings. You didn't have the kind of biomechanical tools. You had to go see Glenn Fleissig or Arnell to see those kind of stick figure things, and even then, it was rare. Now you can do it with your iPhone. So it's one of those interesting things in that we don't really know, but we've got some better tools now. So we're moving it. If you can keep your acute chronic workload ratio, and I know there are people that'll debate this with me, fine. If you can keep your acute chronic workload ratio in a safe zone and build up the right way, you could take some time off and then build up, and it's going to take a longer period of time, and you got to time it out and systematize it again. Or you can keep yourself at a lower level and just have a little bit of a dip and ramp back up. There's a lot of ways to do it. So I will only blame youth baseball. Again, PitchMart had the best of intentions, couldn't be enforced. It became a poster, not a lifestyle, and people found a way around it. And that's the problem. We figured out how to profit from youth baseball. I actually saw a presentation about a company that using, I'm not sure of which video technology, but they're like, oh, we can put gambling on this. And I'm like, if we're gambling on Little League, we got bigger problems as a society.
Yeah.
But it's coming. I think it's one of those where showcase organizations, everybody's got to play because the scouts have got to see everybody, which means they're pumping heat for one inning, throwing the biggest sweeper they possibly can, and then we're wondering why they have a problem. I can remember a parent calling me saying, hey, is there a good surgeon in Indianapolis? And I'm like, tell me why. Well, his son was playing for 3 different travel teams and had started 6 games that week. None of the coaches knew about the other teams. And even if they did, This kid was a really good young 12-year-old pitcher. And so his father had good intentions, the coaches all had good intentions, and we saw exactly where it led to, which was a 12-year-old having Tommy John surgery.
Yes.
I haven't checked, but I haven't seen him in the major leagues. So what was that worth? We've got to get to a system where it's not profitable for these kids to throw that much in the way they are. But I have no idea how to incentivize health other than, hey, you're not getting cut on and paying for a surgery.
Sure. Yeah, that's a lot to take in there from the youth perspective. One thing, within your presentation, Will, that was pretty compelling. You mentioned there's only one lever left to pull on. You talked about recovery quite a bit. That resting does not equal recovery as well. Yeah. Want to hear from you on that, but also want to hear from you, Major League Baseball implementing the amateur recovery period, basically a scouting dead period recently, protecting young pitchers, prohibiting big league teams from basically scouting, recording video, collecting data on or attending workouts from these certain groups, basically October to January, depending on college and high school. Talk about that first, and then your thoughts on and pieces of your presentation based on recovery being that last lever to pull.
Yeah, great question. Let me hit on that dead period first.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great.
Terrible idea. This is much like PitchMark in that every good intention, but now what we've just given them is a blind period where they can experiment. We're going to see these kids going in and pulling out the TrackMan and spending a month trying to learn a new pitch because they don't have to show it to a scout. A scout isn't going to see them. There's still going to be fall ball. There's still going to be guys working out. You're not going to change that behavior. What we've given them is an experimentation period. And some of that will be good. Guys will learn new pitches, but those periods usually have more workload. I don't think it's going to change that whatsoever.
You're kind of hinting at the same thing with PitchMark, the same theme as like the lack of enforceability of these things, right?
Yeah, because these guys are going to be working out. Everybody knows who owns the gym, who owns the labs, who are the college coaches, the high school coaches that are watching, and they're going to tell the scout. So teams are going to know anyway. This is well intentioned and just isn't going to get to the result they want. On the rest, this was the one slide I wish I could go back and do because I don't think I did a very good job of explaining it. So I'm going to try to do a whole lot better right now. Obviously, I don't have to explain recovery to this audience. To parents, I think we do. To other people, I think we do. And during the World Series, they kept talking about how the Dodgers were using more rest to with the 6-man rotation, which they don't use a 6-man rotation for rest. The recovery techniques for all the pitchers are very, very different. But it's the word 5 days rest that really got to me because I immediately saw most people out there think 5 days rest is okay. They realize there's other things going on, but okay, Shohei Ohtani pitches on Sunday and then things happen. Well, he's hitting. Yamamoto pitches on Sunday and then, he's going to have a bullpen day. He's throwing a little bit. And he comes out the next night and blows everybody away. Wins MVP. Maybe this isn't the best. Clayton Kershaw shows up on Sunday.
There we go.
And he does some things in between. But there's a whole lot more that people don't know. There is so much going on to get a pitcher from start 1 to start 2. What is going on? What is that recovery period? What do pitchers have to do to get back? We're not encasing their arm in ice anymore. We've got better techniques. I can remember old pictures of Sandy Koufax with Charlie Stratter. No, it wasn't Charlie at that point. But the athletic trainer at the time, just covering him in basically hot sauce. not a great idea, but it couldn't have felt good. I watch Hot Ones. Maybe we should get Sandy on that. But then you'd see Nolan Ryan, with his arm just taped up in ice bags. Okay,
Yeah.
now we know that's not a great idea. Uh, but what's next? Most baseball fans don't know what the heck Mark Pro is. They don't know what all these modalities in the training room is because they've never been shown them. I want every time somebody says 5 days rest, 4 days rest, for some athletic trainer to whisper, hey, do you know what that really means? What's going on in that gap? Why don't we know it? And how can we show it? How can the profession, the industry show what's going on? And how can we make that better? Because, from capsaicin to ice to the amazing tools we have now, that shows a progression of a profession. And I think that's a story that hasn't been told. So that slide, I don't think I did very well because what I wanted to show was there is a really open lane to talk about what's going on, even in the face of a third of major league pitchers breaking down in any given year. This is what we're doing to try to stop that, to try to reduce that. And like I said, I don't think I did a very good job with that slide. Hopefully I did a better job explaining it here.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And kind of one thing that reminds me of is, I feel like you keep mentioning there is like a workload tolerance that we need to train in. So there are things going on. You are throwing, you are pitching. Some team physicians I've talked to were in favor of the dead period. They don't want guys throwing. Some people do. There's so many different pieces of information going on from recovery. You mentioned different players recover differently. Different athletes have different tissues. There's so much individualized data here. You wanted to highlight the kind of like uniformity needed for the data, for the staffs. How important is that to solving the problem?
Oh, I think it's exceptional. I think one of the things we've done poorly as an industry is, let's just take the Dodgers and the 6-man, or go back to the Mets original 5-man. Why did they go to a 5-man? It was very, very simple. They had 5 really good pitchers.
Sure.
There was no scientific reason for it. They had 5 really good pitchers. And the Orioles of that era had 4 really good pitchers. If they had had 5, they would have used a 5-man rotation, as Earl Weaver said at the time. The issue, I think, is that we've always treated these guys like they're the same.
Yeah.
If you're in a 4-man rotation, a 5-man rotation, you pitch, then you got 4 other guys that pitch, and then some off days in there, but then you pitch again. But is that the best schedule? Should these guys go out and pitch 9 innings, 8 innings, 5 innings, 3 innings? Are there some starting pitchers that were better as a 3-inning opener? Probably. Are there some guys that can go out there and pump for 9 innings and go 170 pitches? Probably. I can remember Greg Maddux at the end of his career. He'd go out there for 6 innings, nod to the managers, I'm done. Sometimes that was 80 pitches, sometimes that was 90. But if there are ways to make these guys better, there are ways to figure this out. Why do we have a 5-man rotation? What if this guy needs 6 days and this guy only needs 4 days? And it looks a little bit like chaos, but we've got tools now to figure this out. What days could these guys come back? How could we put it together? It doesn't have to be a 5-man rotation. It should look like an absolute mishmash of chaos, but you're putting each guy in there, or at least making them available in the same way. I mentioned Yamamoto earlier. Obviously, no days rest, came out there and killed. I understand that's game 7. You're not going to do that on a Wednesday in April, but it shows that there's many different ways to do this. And I think the amount of data, the amount of workload, whether the dead period works or not, we should be measuring it. All these pitchers, whether you're taking your own measurements, whether you only use a Rapsodo every couple weeks to check your pitches, whether you're using Driveline Pulse every day or once a week or only during starts, I think players and parents and coaches and athletic trainers should all be trying to gather that data uh, in a way that's just simply not being done in order to get to better decisions.
Yeah, and I want to kind of ask you, Will, there obviously is a difference in what the staffs 20 years ago looked like, the standard five-man rotation, whatever it's always been. Regular season versus postseason, obviously totally different. Like you mentioned, Yamamoto coming back on no days rest, or like Aaron Ashby with the Brewers. He's the opener. He's out of the bullpen all year. 98, great lefty, and then I think he opened three of the biggest games of the year for the Brewers. So talk about kind of the competitive nature, different situations, matchup stuff compared to like the recovery side, because there's going to be two different pathways, I think, when those are seen. When it's critical, it's a postseason versus a mishmash unit during the regular season as well to kind of carry you through to that postseason. What's your viewpoint on that?
Yeah, there's a couple ways of looking at that, and the postseason is different because it's shorter. You don't know how long you're going to do. You can rest afterwards, but you're still doing damage. So I don't think it should be completely different. You can go back a long ways. You mentioned Ashby. I think the first one I'll think about is Andrew Miller, back when he was with both the. Do we call him the Indian still? I always never know where to make that crossover.
Yeah.
Cleveland, and then again with St. Louis, he became kind of that super reliever, and he had heavier usage, and they used him deeper. They were willing to use him more in the postseason for 2-3 innings at the back of the game. But then we also had the Royals, who had a 7, 8, 9 guy who was basically automatic, and okay, that worked because you had those. Not many teams did at that point. Or Jacob Misiorowski, another Brewer,
sure,
who they were protecting by only throwing a few innings at a time. And good Lord, that kid's got. I remember the first time I saw him down in Maryvale, and I was just,
yeah, crazy.
I was actually standing next to an athletic trainer. I was like, "Who is that kid?" First, give him a sandwich, and then second, tell me more about him. But so good. But here's the thing. Okay, so if you're only going to let him throw 50 pitches, why 50 pitches every 5 days? Is there a good reason? Okay, I actually know why they did that. And I won't betray the Brewers on that. But could he have done it every third day? What if you could have Miz go out there every third day, throw 40 pitches? Is that more valuable? I think it quite possibly could be. Could you do that all season long? Maybe. I don't know. We can certainly model it. I think we have enough data on him specifically. Could we take, some of these kids? What's the best use for Ben Joyce as he comes back from labrum surgery? And he's already throwing the upper 90s again. So first, the question is, can he come back? Well, it looks like yes. Second, is he going to throw as hard? If he doesn't throw as hard, what's hard enough for him?
Exactly.
Is 98
yeah.
a good pitcher at 98, or does he have to be at 104? I think there's so many ways we can take a look at how these things go together. Whether it's openers, which I'm a big believer in, whether it's there are starting pitchers that absolutely hate that because they've got this long routine. And my question is, why do you have this stupid long routine? They're like, well,
sure.
I've got to have 4 hours of why? I'll guarantee you Sandy Koufax didn't have a 4-hour warm-up. Maybe he'd be healthy if he did. But there's ways to make things happen, and there's ways to individualize these things. And more, these tools are available down the line. We're seeing college baseball, especially in the NIL era, catch up really quick on how much stuff they have and how much they have to take care of now $1 million pitchers. We're seeing these kids come up readier. We're probably going to see Brewers again, a 19-year-old shortstop. We're probably going to see I forget whether Connor Griffin is going to be 19 when he reports here, and he could very well be the opening day shortstop for the Pirates. So we're seeing younger and younger kids who are readier and readier. Max Clark with the Tigers could be their center fielder by midseason. I think again, we've got to find ways to personalize and individualize, and those tools exist, whether it's more data, whether it's sensors, whether it's cameras, whether it's AI. And I think trainers that aren't already looking at that are already behind.
Yeah, and I know that, the majority of our members within PBATS have mentioned there is work going on there. I think when we had Brad Pearson with the Red Sox on, who was also at the conference, he spoke about their investment in AI and tools that they're working on. So excited to see where that takes the profession. Well, Will, one of the final slides of your presentation was talking about leading from the training room. I think the quote was like, you don't need permission to improve the system. Don't quote me on that. After everything you've shared, are there a few key takeaways for athletic trainers listening, for big league athletic trainers, for first year intern at spring training this year that if they got their hands on this presentation or are listening to this, that you think is most important from the $1 Billion Bleed?
Yes, but no.
Okay.
And I'll say why. And it goes back to what I said at the start. I don't pretend to be a doctor, a trainer, a therapist. I understand how hard these guys have to work. I understand how lucky and hardworking they are to be there. And I think they understand that as well. I also know that each of them has a skill set. They've got a base. They've all got a base, but each of them has an interest and a skill set. Some are better at this, some are better at that. Some love doing this, some hate doing that. So I think what you have to do is look in the mirror. I think each and every trainer has to walk out there every day as they do and give it their all. But I think there's ways where they can maximize what they're doing and raise their value to the organization. Because if they do that, I don't think they have to do some big dramatic thing. Can I get 1% better? Can I get 0.1% better at this? Can I get this result? Can I, even if it's just building a relationship with a player, that might make tomorrow better because he's going to trust you and tell you about his shoulders a little sore when maybe he wouldn't. There's so many different ways. So I don't want to sit here and say, you need to do this, you need to do that, because I don't know which you is listening right now. I would say you need to look in the mirror and say, how can I get 1% better? And again, I really hate round numbers. I think better. What can I do better? 1% compounds too quickly. What can I do better? What can I do even different? I think we fear failure way too much, and failure just tells you which direction not to go. We wouldn't have light bulbs if Edison hadn't failed 1,000 times previous. And I think we're far too scared of having to adjust, having to say, whoops, that was a terrible idea. I don't know what I was thinking. Or actually, I do know what I was thinking, and it didn't work. So let's do this now. Let's adjust it for this player. Too many times we think about our successes and want to put that template on everything, where I think, again, more and more individualization is probably where I believe it's going, being able to use the data that we have. So I would say, especially young trainers, learn as much as you can, but find ways that you individually can add value and find, like I did, find a niche and fill it.
Sure.
And do something better than everybody else.
Yeah. No, that's very well said, and obviously appreciate you sharing all of those details from the presentation. Kind of wrapping up today, Will, I want to kind of hear from you. What storylines, are you most excited to cover or track this year? Spring training is underway. Pitchers and catchers are getting going here. Opening day is coming up in a handful of weeks. Is there anything you're most excited about to cover, to watch, to just follow this upcoming baseball season?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it here. We've got so many good young players. And I think this highlights the need for really good young developmental trainers, whether that's in the minor leagues, whether that's at the complex, whether that's at the training facilities in the off season, whether it's at the academies. I think we have to put more of an emphasis on those young players. And I think if you're an athletic trainer who's just coming in and you're at single A, you're going to have every opportunity to work on $1 million athlete.
Yeah.
Might be in the major leagues next year. If you're at AA, I guarantee you that's going to happen. So I'm excited about just the level of young players.
Yeah.
Max Clark, Jesus Mate, Jacob Mizorowski, Connor Griffin, Kevin McGonigal. I could go on. Paul Skeens. We've never seen anything like a Paul Skeens.
Yeah.
He was here in Indianapolis when he was, made his cameo appearance in AAA, and went out there. I did the same thing, but I watched his teammates gather around to watch his bullpen ahead of a start. I have never seen that. Maybe the Dodgers did that with Koufax. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But they just stopped. Forget warm-ups, forget infield, forget bat. They just stopped and watched a bullpen. And the minute you see that guy throw, you know how good it is. So I'm excited about that. I'm not excited about 27. I think there's going to be a stoppage. But I think 26 is going to be the year that we figure out baseball is going to be okay. And I hope that behind the scenes that we somehow, that one of these owners really takes an emphasis and says, you know what, I'm not going to be part of that $1 billion. Screw that. I'm a billionaire. I want to lose less money. That's a goal of mine for this year, and gives more resources. The thing I've said for a year is hire one more athletic trainer per team. And I mean all the way down.
Yeah, and I think that's actually something that I was going to mention is I was thinking about this as you were talking. There's so many, we're producing, the team rosters within PBAT, so everyone has access, and we'll be sure to get you a copy of that. But the growth of their profession, the majority of teams, you're now seeing single A, double A, those have assistant athletic trainers. In the past, it was a 23-year-old go to single A. Ron Porterfield will tell you he drove the bus, he drove the van, he handed out hotel keys, he bought food, he cooked soup for people, asking about the stores. It's amazing. There's going to be an assistant and a head athletic trainer at almost all the affiliates now. Yeah. The profession is growing, which is amazing, to your point right there.
Yeah, and the other one is I think the college game is doing much the same thing. If you're a collegiate athletic trainer, you don't have to be a major school. I think the growth is there, and we're going to see people make that leap in the same way that Tony Vitello went from Tennessee to the San Francisco Giants. We're going to see somebody, whether it's Wake Forest or Vanderbilt or Louisiana Tech, all those labs that are out there. We're going to see people jump from college to the pros in the same way. And so I'm excited about that. For the profession, I really want to see us keep it below $1 billion. I want to see at least 2 teams get serious about it and make structural changes. And I've got an idea which I think there's 3 that might be moving in that direction. I wish it was 30, but I'll take 3.
Yeah, it's not bad. Well, we, to your point about the college to the pros, we had Jeff Wood, the head athletic trainer at Tennessee Baseball, on the show previously, and it's really interesting to hear the development there as well. Like you mentioned, there's so much going on data-wise and just hiring more smart minds in the room, the better. I think we'd all agree on that. Well, Will, I really appreciate your time today. Always great to kind of get this insight as it relates to athletic training and the profession in baseball. Take a second here to let us know where people can find you. People that don't know of your work or want to subscribe to Substack, social media, let us know where they can check you out.
Yeah, you can find me at undertheknife.substack.com. If you are a member of PBATS, email me. It's theinjuryexpert@gmail.com. Email me and I will comp you in because you deserve to read about your successes and occasionally failures. But I'm a huge supporter of PBATS. I'm a huge fan of this podcast, so I'm honored to be on here. But like I said, undertheknife.substack.com and some other places that you'll find soon.
Awesome. Well, thanks again and good luck if you find yourself at spring training and throughout the year.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Inside Athletic Training Podcast. For more information about PBATS and the profession of athletic training, visit pbats.com. See you next time.